Hey, Brian, can you hear me now? This is Brian O. Okay, yep, sorry, I could not get my mic to work earlier, but you guys had the privilege of not having to hear me, so that was probably nice. But I do have a question for you later on the Swan Falls stuff. Big Wood guys wanted me to ask you one question. We'll talk later.
Testing, can you hear us?
Maybe now.
I think it's pound.
It's the video ID, but I think it's the same.
Testing, can you hear us?
Hopefully my wife.
Yeah.
So you're not up there. Maybe what we should do is just log out and log back in.
It's this. It has nothing to do with the actual room, this room,
Sorry.
But if you
right?
and log back in, it should flash up what it takes to do it.
Not overnight yet, but
It did
we're
the
getting.
first time.
Oh, well, that's really
Yeah.
annoying.
Testing, testing. Can you guys hear us online?
Yes, I can hear you, Melanie.
Perfect, okay. You're good to go.
Thank you. Sorry for the short delay there. Welcome to the Cloud Seeding Committee meeting. This is number 1-26 being held at the Water Center and via Zoom and live stream on YouTube. I'm Mark, Chairman of the committee. Our committee members are Jeff Raybould, Al Barker, and Pat McMahon on the committee. Do we introductions?
I'm gonna ask Mylene to take a roll call of committee members.
Yes. Lynn, would you take a roll? You've taken a roll call of committee members. We have a
Yes.
quorum.
Good afternoon. Mr. Barker,
Present.
Mr. McMahon,
Here.
Mr. Raybould,
Here.
Chairman Gibbs.
Here.
Also online, we have Board Member Dale Van Stone and Brian Olmstead.
Thank you. There was no one, I checked just a moment ago, there was no one signed up for a public comment. Is that still the case?
Correct, we only received one online public comment.
You received one online public comment, which
Correct.
has been distributed to members of the committee.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
With that, Senate Bill 1269 and Nick handling that.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Nick, would you come up and take care of agenda item number 3, Senate Bill 1269?
Yes, sir.
Well, good afternoon, members of the committee. Mr. Chairman, it's nice to be with you on this 21st day of July. I'm going to pull open my presentation here that addresses the first couple items on the agenda. Bear with me just a second. Okay, here we go.
Share your screen.
It's, that's great. Oh,
You have to share here first.
yeah.
And then here's your presentation.
It is right there.
Go.
Cool. Looks great. Thank you, Mylene. Okay, so I'm going to speak a little bit today about this Senate Bill 1269, the updated Idaho Code, our authorization and reporting criteria, and how we folded the concepts of the code into our guiding document. Thank you. So I've titled this presentation, Updated Idaho Code, Implications for the Board's Authorization and Reporting Criteria. Over the next probably 10 or 15 minutes, we're going to discuss what the new code does, We're going to discuss key updates to the authorization and reporting criteria. You'll hear me refer to this throughout this presentation as our guiding document. I'm going to demonstrate how the staff has worked with multiple different parties to assure that what we're doing is meeting the letter of the law and fulfilling the code, requirements of the code. And I'm going to conclude with just a brief update on where we're at presently with this document and sort of what the folks on the committee need to know at the end of this talk. So I think without further ado, let's jump into this presentation and discuss what the new code does. And I think it's important to consider this bill, Senate Bill 1269 statement of purpose, right? And I'm just going to read through this because I think it's necessary to touch on, as this paragraph carries the spirit of the bill in a great way. So let's just review this real quick. This legislation updates Idaho's cloud seeding statutes by placing clear definitions, authorization, and reporting mechanisms into law to improve transparency and accountability. It provides for public meetings and reporting on cloud seeding operations. I'm missing a word there, with environmental considerations and program effectiveness under an existing program. So this generally captures the overarching goals of this new legislation that was passed this last spring. And it captures the mood and spirit of what we tried to accomplish with updating our documents, our guiding document. So what the new code does, well, we talked a little bit about this statement of purpose, right? It's a law specifically written to improve transparency and accountability of the state of Idaho's cloud seeding program. It also does a number of other things. It supports the continued research and analysis in cloud seeding within the state of Idaho. It establishes the board's authority to set forth and enforce conditions of authorization. That is our guiding document. It does a couple of other things. And some of the changes from the code carry more weight than others. So I'm looking at the top two bullet points in the right-hand column. It does these things for the first time where it defines an operational period of cloud seeding from October 1st to April 30th. It also defines methods of cloud seeding. It says, okay, we can look at applicants to use traditional methods of cloud seeding like aircraft or ground generators, or as it says in the bill, other application methods. So that is new to the code. These last two items on the right-hand side, last two bullet points, carry more weight. They're of more consequence to what we do here at the department and to the board's program. Namely, the code requires public meetings and a public comment period about cloud seeding to be held. Finally, of foremost importance with updates to the code, it establishes and requires operators to report on a routine basis, that is monthly basis, on cloud seeding activities within the state. And it accomplishes this by asking for increased specificity about operational activity during the previous month, which is something that the previous version of the cloud seeding statute did not do. You'll see there it also says establishes reporting requirements for the board and for operators. So what I just spoke on was the operator aspect. And this concept of what is required from the board takes the form of an annual report that describes the previous year's cloud seeding activities. So I'm going to jump into more of these with more detail in just a moment. We asked basically of each change to the code how we may go about implementing these requirements to meet the letter of the law that ultimately assign the board expanded oversight and reporting duties, right? So to kind of address that, we looked at the contents of the code to provide the scaffolding upon which we use to update the authorization and reporting criteria. And we folded those into our document, right? We incorporated these into our guiding document. Okay. So as I mentioned, it does change the reporting requirements. It also does a couple other minor things. This last bullet point is one of these items. this authorization or reporting criteria update now gives the board permission and authority to potentially revoke an authorization for non-compliance from an operator. So let's get into the substantive changes to our document. Turning to the structure of it, I'm going to address next what it does and how the updates to the code, how the updates to our guiding document reflect the code. So covering the brass tacks of what this document does, what our updated guiding document does, I believe is best thought of sort of breaking the document into two parts. There's the part one, which lists the steps an entity must follow for their proposed project or program to be considered by the board to receive authorization. The changes to this section of the document, as compared to the last, they're not drastically different from the previous, but we defined and distinguished some things and added some detail as required by statute. The next part of the document is the good stuff. And it outlines the terms and conditions that an entity must comply with to maintain their authorization to cloud seed in the state of Idaho. So I'm going to jump forward a slide into what we're looking at here, and then I'm going to back up to this slide. So we're talking now about monthly reporting requirements to fulfill the letter of the law. That is to say, what are we asking of operators to submit on a monthly basis that fulfills the law? So let's look at those, right? We have a list of items taken directly from the code, and we are going to ask operators for locations of ground generators or related infrastructure for their cloud seeding program. We're going to ask for flight paths that they used that previous month. We're going to ask for the amount and type of cloud seeding activities that occurred by each method. That is to say, how much did you seed by aircraft? How much did you seed by ground generators? So forth. We're going to ask for the amount and type of cloud seeding materials used. For our purposes here in the state of Idaho, that's basically saying how much silver iodide did you release that previous month. We're going to ask for any suspension periods that may have occurred in addition to notice of when operations have resumed. And we're going to ask for some general information on methods of operation. And I just wanted to reiterate that this list comes directly from the code itself. Okay, so we're going to back up to continued aspects of what an entity has to do to maintain authorization. So we've spoken just about the first one, that's monthly reporting. We've also made updates to our guiding document that ask for more thorough record keeping and bookkeeping from our operators so that these folks can provide the department staff with things like copies of FAA waivers that they've been granted to conduct cloud seeding in specialized areas. We're going to ask for current NOAA filings. They have two forms particular. We're going to ask for material safety data sheets for the active cloud seeding ingredient, if available. Furthermore, we've asked that operators who have cloud seeding programs authorized in the state to, upon request, present to the staff or board about their project or program. And finally, you'll see there the last bullet point. Upon request, we've asked that operators shall share their data that may be used by a third party for analysis of cloud seeding. So these are new things that we've, or at least some of them are new, that we've folded into this maintaining authorization section of our guiding document. Okay, so a little more on how we're meeting the code and what we did with this document to ensure that we are doing that. Really what we did here over the past year or more with particular attention in the last few months is staff at the department, Caitlin, myself, Planning and Projects Bureau staff, we worked ruthlessly with our legal department to refine this document. We ran it by their department, stakeholders. We've run this by the board and our cloud seeding committee. We've run this by our management team to ensure that what we are asking for in this document is reasonable. And we've said collectively, okay, that is so. What we're asking for is reasonable and it meets the letter of the law. So we said, let's fold these into updating this document, right? And be able to have the legs to enforce the criteria of this document. Additionally, the big changes to the code asked for public comment and public meeting periods, which we feel that cloud seeding materials fulfill. And one last item on here in terms of meeting the letter of the law. In the updated code, there is requirement of the board to generate an annual report for cloud seeding, as I've mentioned. So we think, department staff thinks that it is logical that the monthly operating data that we collect from operators basically feeds into the generation of an annual report that we can create a summary of cloud seeding activities for the previous year upon. And that report, I just wanted to run down the brass tacks of what is to be included in that. These are also language taken directly from the code. And it asks for the board to prepare a report that covers 1, operational data that shall include the dates, locations, and methods of cloud seeding used. 2, it asks for an assessment of any environmental impacts and an update on the state of the science in the state of Idaho. It asks us to track and document and be on top of receiving and tracking any public comment that we receive either in meeting or through other avenues about cloud seeding. And it asks for the board finally to present some some effectiveness metrics for various programs in the state. These are kind of the big things that department staff needs to begin thinking about how these may look in annual reports. So you may be asking yourself, Mr. Banish, where are we at with this authorization and reporting document? And I shall say that we are navigating a couple last steps with our operators in terms of making sure that this is jiving with their understanding and that they can meet what we're asking for here. So I am prepared to bring the final document to the August 5th Cloud Seeding Committee meeting in Rexbrook, Idaho. And staff would ask at that time that that document be considered for a recommendation for a full vote by the board at the September board meeting. With nothing else on this presentation, I will conclude there, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Nick. Are there any questions for Nick? Chairman Raybould.
I'm good, Mr. Chairman.
None, Mr. Chairman. Pat, you have a question for Nick?
None here.
Thank you. Looks like you've covered everything, Nick. I look forward to seeing the report on the August meeting.
Okay, very good, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your time. Committee members, thank you for your time. Caitlin, what are you handling this?
Righty, good morning.
The cloud seeding update?
What's that?
Are you handling the Bear River cloud seeding update?
Yes, I will, Chairman.
Thank you.
Gibbs. Absolutely. Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Caitlin Swanson. I work on the Planning and Projects Bureau. Oops, thank you. Work on the Planning and Projects Bureau. I work on the Managed Aquifer Recharge Program, but primarily alongside my colleague, Nick Banish, to administer the Idaho Water Resource Board's cloud seeding program. Today, you will get this next agenda item. We are going to cover the Bear River Basin cloud seeding update. First, we will get a report on this last season's operations. Last year, during the 2025-2026 winter season, the Idaho Water Resource Board partnered with the Utah Division of Water Resources to conduct a 1-year interstate cloud seeding pilot project.
Pat, are you here okay?
Right.
Yes.
Perfect. I didn't know if you needed to use her.
Sorry, I can speak up a little.
Okay.
Yes, during the 2025-2026 season, the Idaho Water Resource Board partnered with the Utah Division of Water Resources to conduct a 1-year interstate pilot project in the Bear River Basin. This pilot project utilized drone technologies to conduct cloud seeding operations. The Idaho Water Resource Board contributed $950,000 part of which went to conduct operations themselves, and part of which was a portion of that went to a third-party evaluation. In the state of Utah, contributed $3.5 million. The operator of the pilot project was Rainmaker Technology Corporation. And from here on out, I will hand it over to Jared Smith and Max Jones to provide you an overview of the outcomes of the one-year pilot project in the Bear River Basin. There's also a one-page memo in your meeting materials that overviews the report outcomes.
Great. Thanks, Caitlin. I'm Jared Smith. I'm the Regional Director of Operations for Rainmaker, and I was overseeing the operations of the Bear River Basin program this year. So I'm going to give a report on this last year's operations. I think first, let's see. This is the drone that we've used to fly all winter. The Olmstead drone, it weighs about 55 pounds, and we were operating all winter with it, flying up to 15,000 feet. So we'll talk a little more about that here. So just briefly, I wanted to review the program for you and the setup. So this program was initially designed around the NCAR feasibility and design study that was developed for the Bear River Basin. So we essentially had 3 areas based off of 3 of the kind of most promising flight tracks based off the aircraft program in that study. And we had 10 teams. We then secured over 40 sites that were optional for the teams to be able to launch from, targeting the Bear River Basin, primarily the 3 sub-basins, the Middle Bear, Bear Lake, and the Logan Little Bear sub-basin. And then I'll talk about validation, but a big part of our operations was focusing on validation using radar. So the 2 radar that we used were the Pocatello and X-Rad radar. And then we also placed our own X-band radar from Colorado State University on top of Sedgwick Peak. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's just south of Lava Hot Springs, about 9,000 feet elevation. And then we had 10 of our Eden field stations. These are precipitation gauges, vertical pointing K-band radars, just to help validate our operations. So I'll review the objectives and kind of the outcomes from each objective. We had 3 primary objectives. The first one was just to demonstrate the viability of operating drones for a cloud seeding program. Never been done. It's never been done before operationally. So this was a first. And as far as the outcome goes, we were successful. Of course, lots of work put in for it, but we flew over 740 flights, 40 intensive operation periods, and we were able to operate and seed from relatively low to the ground all the way up to 15,000 feet. So quite a big range for operations. This is probably the most, I don't know, for me, the most interesting slide. This is what the slide discussing the validation. So another goal was to basically verify that we could produce unambiguous evidence of our seeding effect in the Bear River Basin. Doing this using radar. So I'll just describe really quick what we're seeing on here. So on the left, you can see this is a GIF, and it's maybe kind of hard to see here, but if you watch, there's this pulsing circles of where we've identified precipitation, and our operations are directly kind of the top left, northwest. And what we've done is we basically circled our plume tracks. So as the wind carries the material into the cloud, tracking that and then overlaying that on top of the radar. So you can actually see that there's this kind of non-natural appearing effect of precipitation in the exact same pattern of our seeding, which is a strong indication that it's man-made. And this is just an example of 5 cases. We actually had 15 cases throughout the season showing these seeding signatures, is what we're calling them. Now with that, we were able to physically validate about 30 acre feet in the region, and then using target control analysis, we were able to produce, depending on the methodology used, whether it's linear or multilinear regressions, 354,000 to 635,000 acre feet. So the physically validated portion is clearly not the majority of what we produced, but it is an inkling or a sign of evidence that clearly, if you get into the cloud and see it, you can see evidence of it. And then lastly, the last objective was just to identify the optimal seeding material and dispersion method in cloud. So at the start of the season, we started seeding with, we were trying dry powder silver iodide. The idea behind this would be that it would be more cost efficient. You can deliver more material efficiently into the cloud because it's just pure silver iodide. So we had a whole system that aerosolized it and dispersed it into the cloud. And then we did that through January. And then come February, one of our operations in Oregon was doing a side-by-side comparison with dry powder silver iodide and flares. And they had a really great radar view shed. And basically using the flares, they found just much stronger return on the radar as far as reflectivity goes. So when the water turns to ice, it reflects more on the radar. So at that point, we additionally received some approval with our waivers to use flares. We switched over to start using flares. So we operated with flares from February through April. And that was just, important for the product to understand what's the most viable seeding method. And then, as far as transparency goes, a big part for Rainmaker of the operation was trying to be as transparent as possible. We produced monthly meetings and reports, met with Nick and Caitlin, sometimes spoke with them weekly, mid and final season reports, including all of our data and statistical analysis. And then we were very transparent with our methodology. So every single one of our cases where we showed unambiguous seeding effect from our operations, we include a very detailed write-up from our radar scientists and meteorologists that discuss the present conditions and essentially walk through how we can differentiate between natural precipitation and man-made precipitation. So this is the summary. This plot shows kind of a summary of the signatures we were able to detect with the radars. Summary of all of our operations and results. I want to talk about the challenges because the season was definitely not without challenge. I'd say the primary challenge for us for validation came with the radar view shed. So the Pocatello radar was the highest quality radar we had. However, there's terrain directly south of it that produced a lot of blockage from the beam. So it limited our ability to see how far we could see into the clouds. So you saw most of our signatures were kind of to the northwest. That was just based off of the view shed from the radar. And then we had this X-band radar from Colorado State University. We did get some signatures with it, but it's, the view shed of it and the sensitivity at a distance was limiting for us. I would say this as far as our ability to detect signatures over a large distance. The second portion that was kind of a challenge was the operational deployments. So this is kind of two parts. One is when a team goes to a site from arrival to actually flying and seeding. At the beginning of the season, it was about an hour for them to get, once they arrived, to get set up and have everything going. By the end of the season, we got it down to about 10 minutes. This was with kind of a whole custom truck build out, Starlink integration, a lot of stuff that went into it, but that really is important for just operational agility. And then the second part was our base of operations was in Salt Lake City. So our operating locations were 2 to 4 hours away from our base. And it just introduced a challenge for logistically and kind of being agile. Obviously, we're not amazing at predicting the weather. So being able to be more flexible and closer to the sites, we feel in the future is going to be really important for successful operations. And then lastly, was just targeting. So difference between orographic and stratiform clouds. The stratiform clouds are kind of easy. It's like an airplane, you just can fly up and target it. Your sighting's not that important. But for the orographic cloud decks, which are kind of by definition made by the mountains, and this is kind of maybe what a lot of ground generators might traditionally target, we found that we need to get our sites much closer to the mountains so that we can actually be seeding in cloud, and making sure that 100% of our material is actually being delivered into the cloud. So these are just three challenges we've been working, we identified and dealt with this winter. Let's see. Okay, so next steps, as far as what we recommend is just, as far as maximizing precipitation, we focus on targeting the Bear River Range, which produces the majority of the water for that area. Scale the physical validation. So this would require improved radar placement and radar quality power. And then lastly, just maximizing residence time in cloud. So a combination of operational improvements, technological improvements, just making sure that we can spend as much time in the cloud as possible, actually seeding to maximize the water production. So that's it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions? Mr. Raybould.
Yeah, I've got a few.
Representative Raybould.
She's not here today. It's another branch of the family.
Excuse me.
You indicated 300 to 600,000 acre feet of additional water from the seeding program this past year. Is that correct?
Yes, that's based off of the target control analysis. Obviously, there's limitations to target control analysis as far as data sets. This is based off of 1 year. So it's a hint at something. It's not, I wouldn't say it's
Did we see that kind of increased volume of water flowing in the Bear River?
I don't know.
That's a chunk of water.
That's a large chunk of water. Yeah.
Yeah, and how much of this was above Bear Lake, and how much of the additional water was seeded and available below Bear Lake?
Yeah. So that is including a mix of both. So I believe the middle Bear is above. There's the three sub basins. Essentially, we covered the whole area. The three sub basins covering to the kind of east of Logan, going into Bear Lake, up north towards Preston, that part of the mountain range, and then down into Cache Valley.
What you were showing us, those areas that you were showing us, the one was west of I-15, and the other one was kind of northwest of Bear Lake. It didn't look to me like there was a lot of potential for any of that additional created water to make it to Bear Lake.
Yeah, so those are just the seeding signatures. Those are just like though that does not cover the entirety of the effect of the seeding plumes, for example. That's just basically where those are biased towards the north because that's where the radar was able to capture it. But those plumes would travel just like any other cloud seeding technology. Those plumes travel with the wind. Okay.
All right, that's good for me for the moment.
Well, that's some of the similar questions I have. I think, I'm not sure the entire yield of Bear River was 600,000 feet this year. So, I mean, if your cloud seeding effort generated that kind of water, I don't know where it went.
Yeah, so I think this speaks back to the limitations of target control analysis, which is exactly what we're trying to kind of move past. I'll explain the analysis, how it works. Essentially, you take several SNOTEL sites in the region, and then you compare them to another region that's not being seeded. You have a long-term historical data set, and then you build a kind of a model, a prediction based off that history between the sites. And then this season we seeded those sites, and based off of linear and multilinear regressions, it showed, I think it's 10 to 19% increase. But it's not statistically significant for 1 year. So this is the whole point of what Rainmaker is trying to do with the physical validation, is bring actual confidence to what water you're producing from Cloud City, not just using kind of these low resolution data sets.
Any other questions? Al, do you have any questions?
No, you and Jeff have asked my questions.
Pat,
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
go ahead,
On
Pat.
the radar signal overlay map, was that overlaid over just a regular map and it wasn't indicated of present conditions when you were doing the radar? Does that make sense?
Let's see. Maybe I don't understand. Maybe repeat that.
Yeah, so the map where you overlaid the radar signals. And
Yeah.
then there's a map underneath it that's, my question is concerning that it's not an actual condition map. It's just a stock map that you put the radar overlay on top of, right? Because there's no snow on the ground.
Yeah, so that's the base map is just a stock map of the region, and then you overlay the radar based off of the locations.
Thank you.
Any questions from members that are not on the committee, Brian or Dale? Well, Joanne, you're on the, I didn't see you're on there. Joanne, do you have a question?
I do not, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I didn't see that. I should have been cheating and looking at Brian's screen.
Mr. Chairman, you asked a question. What was the flow in there this year? Do we have, does IDWR have that data? Brian, do you know?
We undoubtedly have that data. I don't have it off the tips of my fingertips. I'm guessing one of the hydrologists back in the back corner can find it in the next few minutes.
Yeah, one thing I'd say about that data is the precipitation that falls on the land isn't necessarily, that doesn't translate perfectly to stream flow. There's a lot of groundwater consumption. So as we've noted, there's the limitation of the target control now. So this is kind of the whole point of our company that we're trying to get around. But that's what the data says.
The interesting thing I'd like to go back and look at, I haven't obviously, but the Snowtell sites, there is a Snowtell site on Sedgwick Peak.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm not sure it was ever over 100% this year.
Yeah.
And 100% normal, as well as Oxford Spring is also another Snowtell site that's slightly downstream, downhill to the south of Sedgwick Peak.
Yeah.
You made in your comment, I think you said you measured, did you say 30 acre feet of water and then?
Yeah, just with the radar. That's basically, you can detect with the radar, you can use these algorithms to understand when you visualize it with the radar, how much of that falls to the ground.
And how much of that would have fallen to the ground without any seeding?
Oh, that none. Those cases we're claiming 100% unambiguous. That's human made.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any additional questions?
Well, Mr. Chairman, you'd be hard pressed to find any Snowtell site in the state that was over 100% this year.
Yeah. What I'd say about the Snowtell sites, it's not about them being over 100%. It's where they are relative to the control sites that are not being seeded. That's the reference.
What control sites were used here?
I'd have to look it up in the report. I don't have it in here. It's there's is it Magic? I'd have to look it up. It's in the report. Yeah. There's 5 sites. And
I don't want to, I'm not here to grill you. That's what I'm trying to do.
no, it's okay. Grill. It's okay.
So that's not the
Yeah.
intent at all.
Mr. Chairman, just as a comparison, I'm gonna see if I can get a head nod from staff. My guess is that it was a rather dry winter.
Yeah.
Not terribly dry, but temperature played more of a factor into how much snowpack we got than an actual precip. But I would guess in the upper Snake, we might have achieved a couple of 100,000 acre feet of additional snow water equivalent through the seeding program in the upper Snake, about a third of the average or something under the circumstances. Well, whatever the number might be, the size of that program compared to the program in the Bear, I believe leads me to be very skeptical that the program in the Bear generated 300,000 acre feet.
I think, we would agree with you in that, yeah.
Any additional comments or questions? Thank you, sir.
Awesome, thank you.
Hi, thank you. So next I'll provide the committee with an update on the third-party evaluation of the Bear River Basin pilot project. There's a one-page memo that overviews an update of the contract and the scope of work for this project. On July 25th, 2025, the Idaho Water Resource Board authorized expenditures to conduct the one-year interstate cloud seeding pilot project in the Bear using drone technology in collaboration with the Utah Division of Water Resources. Kind of touching on what we said earlier, a portion of that funding was contributed directly to operations. That was $450,000, and then $500,000 was authorized for a third-party evaluation of the pilot project and drone operations. And so the scope of work for this third-party assessment has been developed, and the project is currently in the contracting process with the National Center for Atmospheric Research, which I will refer to here on as NCAR. And this analysis will directly build off of the work previously completed by NCAR. In 2022, NCAR completed a feasibility and design study for the Bear River Basin utilizing traditional cloud seeding mechanisms. Those mechanisms are ground-based generators and aircraft. This feasibility and design study was funded by the board. And a couple of the key outcomes that we got from the feasibility and design study, and really what the objectives were achieved from that study is that one, NCAR conducted a climatological analysis that evaluated the frequency of seedable conditions within different layers of the atmosphere. And really what this task did was provided the board with an understanding on average, what cloud seeding conditions are present within the Bear River Basin, and taking that a step further, what is the frequency of conditions that are seedable using ground generators specifically and aircraft specifically. And then NCAR used the WRF weather model to simulate cloud seeding cases using various operational designs. And this was really completed to understand which method yielded the most water in the Bear River Basin, and then also provided the board with an operational design that suggested flight path locations and ground generator locations to optimize benefit in the basin. And so really this study, this next phase of this project, is going to complete similar objectives to the 2022 feasibility and design study, but assess the effectiveness of drone operations within the Bear River Basin. Originally, there was interest in modeling the pilot season, but the scope of work was revised throughout the season to best address the questions of the board. Board staff identified that there's real value in understanding what the seasonal impacts of drones are in the basin rather than evaluating 1 year of partial operational data. And really the goal here is to understand on average, how well do drones impact the Bear River Basin? And so there's going to be three main tasks and objectives in this evaluation. The first task will be to conduct the climatological analysis of the Bear River Basin conditions that are seedable using drones specifically. So much like the first feasibility and design study, NCAR will assess the frequency and characteristics of conditions in the region that you can specifically use target drones for. And this will provide a board an understanding of how often can we cloud seed in the Bear using drones. The next step of the project will be to set up the WRF weather model to simulate drones. Currently, the WRF weather model is set up to simulate ground-based generator operations and aircraft operations. And so NCAR will need to modify the model to also simulate the unique flight behaviors of drone platforms and set up the model to simulate the flares that the drones use to disperse seeding material. Following that, the next step will be to conduct a sensitivity test. And so in the 2022 Bear River Basin Feasibility and Design Study, NCAR had selected multiple cases to simulate impacts from. And this provided the board an understanding of the effectiveness of the generators versus the aircraft, and ultimately how much water was yielded using each methodology for these cases that were simulated. And so NCAR will also simulate these cases using drones so that the board can understand how much water is yielded in these cases using the drone technology. And then taking this a step further, what NCAR will do is take these simulated benefits and pair them with the frequency of conditions using each method, and we'll extrapolate that over a full season so that a range of full season volumetric water yields can be provided to the board for each method. So really what this is going to do is provide a range of water that you can potentially get using each method in the Bear. So using aircraft, ground-based generators, and drones. And then once we have that range of volumes that we can see on, or that we would anticipate on an average season using each method, we know the cost to conduct cloud seeding operations using each method, and a cost benefit analysis can be completed. And this information will really help the board identify which method can produce the most water at the lowest cost in the Bear River Range so that the board can responsibly expend state funds to cloud seed into the Bear River Basin. And so really to summarize, this study is going to, 1, input drones into the model, 2, see how often conditions are present using drones, and then 3, provide the board this volumetric range of water that can be produced on average using each method. I'm happy to answer any questions about this third-party analysis.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Caitlin, if this study is completed by NCAR, will it tell us where cloud seeding is most effective in the basin and how much can accrue to different subbasins?
Mr. Barker, yes, they will look at which portions of the basin would have the greatest impact from cloud seeding operations. This was also, that was one of the results that we got from the original feasibility and design study. They look at the 3 different ranges that ultimately provide any inflow into the Bear River Basin, and they provide their estimate of which section essentially of the Bear would yield the most water.
Thank you.
Anyone else, Raybould? Caitlin, what's the timeline on the NCAR study that we're looking at?
We're looking at a tiered results approach. So we'll get an understanding of the frequency of drone operations within 3 months of contract execution. And then within 8 months, we will have results from the simulated cases using drones, and the full report will be ready within 18 months of contract execution. However, within this contract, it is built in to provide the board presentations as results become available. So you will get a presentation on the results before the final report is submitted to the board.
I guess the next question is, when is the contract execution going to take place?
That really depends on our internal process, how quickly we can get it through our contracting team and NCAR's team. But we are in the process of that, and we're hoping to see that completed here real soon.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Anyone online, not online on the Zoom call, Pat or other members of the board that are not on the committee?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Pat, go ahead, please.
Caitlin, so the cost of this NCAR is rolled into the whole pilot project cost of $1,662,000. Is that correct?
So the funding for this specific assessment was authorized last year. It was a portion of that $950,000 that was authorized by the board in 2025. And so this project has the pilot contributed a portion of that to operations and a portion of this to the third-party assessment. And so funds have already been authorized for this study.
Very good. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr.
I hear,
Chairman,
I have other questions.
Mr. Chairman, this is Brian Olmstead, board member. And my question kind of relates, Caitlin, to, you know, specifically this winter, we had, you know, the snowpack was very high. So are we studying? I mean, to me, the biggest benefit is if the cloud seeding precip adds to the snowpack, not to rainfall on the lower elevations. Is there a way to differentiate between that when we're targeting our, you know, if we can get, I mean, hopefully most winters are not going to be this warm where the snow is so high, but it was real obvious that you know, the big benefit was where, you know, the last water that comes off is that highest snowpack. So is that something that you can build into the model somehow?
Yeah,
Or is
Mr.
precip?
Yeah, Mr. Olmstead, NCAR specifically will look at SWE. And so NCAR is going to be looking at those high elevation portions of the specific ranges. They will have an understanding of where the snowpack will ultimately land. It's kind of a trickier question, which portion of that ultimately will become precip or SWE is a little bit more of a difficult question, but that is something that will be baked into this analysis. But ultimately, NCAR will be looking specifically at SWE or snowpack.
Any other
Okay, thank
comments or questions from the board members? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And I am going to stay up here. You got me for another couple minutes. I will pull up this presentation. Mylene, do I have to share? You have to share your screen, yes. Okay, is that through? Oh, it's through Zoom. Okay. Perfect. I need to hide this. I will leave my mouse here. All right, and so for the next portion of this Bear River Basin cloud seeding update, I'm going to provide a committee kind of an overview of water in the Bear River Basin and ultimately a system overview of the Bear River Basin. More specifically, I'll talk about where cloud seeding operations occur within the basin, where the water goes in the basin, and who's allocated that water throughout a typical year. Really, the goal of this presentation is to help understand what areas of the Bear River Basin needs to be targeted to maximize benefits to the water users and provide an overview of who those beneficiaries are. First, I wanted to begin with familiarizing us with the area. The Bear River Basin, or the Bear River, excuse me, runs through 3 states, Utah, Wyoming, and Idaho. And here, I'll move this over here. Hopefully you can all see my mouse. The headwaters of the system are in the Uintas Tier down south. The river is a north flowing system that runs through Utah, through Wyoming, through Idaho, and ultimately loops back into Utah into the Great Salt Lake. And this system is broken out into 3 administrative divisions. Right here, we have the upper division, which I'm outlining with my mouse. We have the central division right here. And then this larger section to the west is the lower division. Additionally, there are 3 ranges that feed the Bear River. We have the Uinta Mountains here, which is the headwaters of the system. We have the Salt River Range here and the Bear River Range here. You're going to see some acronyms throughout this presentation. So UIN refers to Uinta Mountains, Salt River Range, or SRR refers to Salt River Range, and BRR refers to Bear River Range. And so this system is unlike other basins that we cloud seed in Idaho. In other basins, all of the water in Idaho goes to Idaho water uses. And in this system, this is a multi-state basin, which adds some complexities. The management and allocation of water throughout the basin is also more complex, given that it is its interstate system. Additionally, multiple ranges provide inflow into the system, and who benefits is not as straightforward as in other basins in which cloud seeding operations are conducted in Idaho. And so first I wanted to kind of touch a little bit more on that feasibility and design study conducted in 2022. Again, NCAR looked at aircraft and ground generator cloud seeding mechanisms in this study, and they did find that there is great potential for both in several portions of the Bear River Basin. Specifically for aircraft, there's potential in October to May, and they found that spring was the most effective in this for aircraft, and ground potential November to April, where December and February have the highest potential. In this graph here, these graphs over here to the right, this shows the amount of supercool liquid water by elevation in the atmosphere. Here on the y-axis, we have the height of the atmosphere. On the x-axis, we have the amount of supercool liquid water. These graphs have been developed for the Bear River Range, the Salt River Range, and the Uintas. And so you could see here that there's quite a bit of opportunity and a lot of supercooled liquid water in these mid elevations. And in the red there, we have the aircraft's flight altitudes. And so we have some limitations with ground generators in this area because there's a lot of inversions in this area. There's some limitations with aircraft because there's minimum flight elevation requirements to fly safely. However, ejectable flares can be utilized to target those mid elevations as well. And so this is a use case somewhat for drones or for aircraft utilizing those ejectable flares. And what NCAR found was that aircraft is recommended over ground generators in the Bear River Basin because there's more frequency due to less inversions and it yields the most water. And so I wanted to bring this graph up. It's kind of hard to see the colors here, but on the left, we have the frequency of conditions to seed with aircraft. On the right, we have the frequency to seed with ground generators. And so you can see here that this entire area really is yellow in this aircraft. So a majority of the basin can be seeded and has good potential in using aircraft. And then if you look at the ground generator map, it seems a little bit contradictory since we see there's less frequency, but then we see these dark blue colors here in all of the ranges, in the Bear, the Salt, and the Uintas. And the reason that there's kind of this contradiction is because there is a good amount of water and there's a good amount of frequency potential in the ground layer. However, you have to rely on orographic lift to disperse material in cloud when you use ground seeding, ground-based generators, which ultimately means you have to have the right wind speeds and you have to have an updraft of wind to disperse material in cloud. And so if you're going to use ground generators in this area, NCAR recommended to place these generators in high elevation areas above 6,000 feet. But if you do not have to rely on orographic lift and can disperse directly in cloud, your potential and your frequency does increase, so you can seed this layer a lot more often. And this also demonstrates a use case for drones in these specific regions. A couple other different key takeaways from the feasibility and design study is that if you target the lower Bear, which is a combination of the Salt River Range and the Bear River Range together, your impact is 5 to 6 times more beneficial than if you cloud seed the Uintas alone. Ultimately, what we're looking at here is this lower Bear, which I'll circle here, yields the most potential and the most water produced in those areas. Another key finding was that 50% of the storms last 6 hours or longer in this area, and NCAR recommended having 2 aircraft to hit the entire duration of the storm. Oops, we went ahead. Okay, so next I'm going to talk more about, based on where we cloud seed, where is the water going to go? Who is going to get the water? And so if we cloud seed down here in these Uinta Mountains, The water that will be produced from cloud seeding will all go above Bear Lake. The division that is benefited will be the upper division, which is ultimately from the Uinta Mountains down here to Pixley Dam. And some of the key findings from the NCAR feasibility and design study is that targeting this area is challenging. It's narrow, there's limited headwater target area, it's topographically complex ultimately. And the Uintas also impact other river basins. But it is worth mentioning that the state of Utah does have ground generators in this area that are in the recommended locations from NCAR. So this area is getting ground-based seeding operations. Next, I'll talk a little bit about Bear River Basin storage. So we have the Bear Lake is right here. Total reservoir storage for the Bear Lake is 1.4 million acre feet. This is ultimately how much Bear Lake can store, how much it can hold. But as far as the annual storage allocation, it is 235,000 acre feet. The annual storage use is Idaho uses 35% of the storage allocation. Utah gets 65% of the storage allocation. And this is a multi-year storage reservoir. And so you're going to see carryover over 5, 6, 7 years. We also have reservoirs in the upper division. These are called what I'm referring to as the upper reservoirs. The two largest ones that ultimately hold most of the water are the Woodruff Narrows and Sulphur Creek. They combined to hold about, we're looking at like 70,000 acre feet of water. And these are all of the upper reservoirs are above Bear Lake. If you look at all of the reservoirs in the upper division, all of the upper reservoirs combined, there's about 100,000 acre feet of storage capacity. And these reservoirs can be filled when the water level in Bear Lake is above 5,913 feet. And worth mentioning is that there's carryover in these reservoirs most years. And so now touching on where does the water go in the upper division? If we cloud seed in the Uintas, where will that water go based on what time of year it is? And so during spring runoff, unregulated flow, small amount will go to irrigation diversions for Utah and Wyoming users. You're going to see this is a common theme among all of these divisions is during spring runoff, a small portion will go to irrigation. It's just because irrigation demand is lower during spring runoff. Less than 100,000 acre feet will go to upper reservoir storage, in which Utah and Wyoming benefit from those storage allocations. But most of the water will go to Bear Lake, in which Utah and Idaho are allocated the storage water. And then during water right regulation, when flow is less than 1,250 CFS, all flow in the Bear River is allocated to Utah and Wyoming. And all of that flows goes to irrigation diversions for Utah and Wyoming users. So Idaho does not get any of the water during water right regulation. So next we'll talk about cloud seeding in the Salt River Range. So if you cloud seed in the Salt River Range, this range extends northern, and so the northern portion flows into the Upper Snake, the southern portion flows into the Bear River Basin. If you cloud seed in the Salt River Range, all the water that will be produced will majority go above Bear Lake. The division that will be benefited is the Central Division, and that extends from Pixley Dam here to Stewart Dam. Based on the NCAR feasibility and design study, some of the key takeaways here was that the Salt River Range does receive benefit when the Bear River Range is cloud seeded. And the NCAR study recommended that you seed the Bear River Range and the Salt River Range in tandem to receive the most benefit. And it has a lot of good potential for cloud seeding. Some things I wanted to bring up here in this presentation is provide you a couple snapshots of some of these simulations from the NCAR feasibility and design study. We have the simulations using ground generators and aircraft here. These are only point snapshots and only during one section of the whole case itself. But this kind of provides you an overview of, based on where you see, where will we typically see these, the cloud seeding occur. And so you can see here that we need to seed the Bear River Range in Idaho to target the Salt River Range. Again, kind of coming back to seeding them in tangent to receive benefit. And this is the case for both ground generators and for aircraft. Another thing to consider here is that water does go to multiple places. If you do cloud seed the Salt River Range, there's water. If you get to the north, we'll go to the Upper Snake. The south will go to the Bear. And if it goes over into the eastern border, it will benefit the greater Green Range, which ultimately feeds into the Colorado Basin in Wyoming. But where does the water go if you do cloud seed the Salt River Range? So it will go to the Central Division. During spring runoff, again, a small amount will go to irrigation diversions. These diversions will benefit Idaho and Wyoming water users. But most of the runoff will go to Bear Lake, which benefits Utah and Idaho. During water right allocation, when divertible flow is below 870 CFS or the flow at border gauge is below 350 CFS, all flow in the Bear River is allocated to Idaho and Wyoming in the Central Division specifically. And this does occur most years. And so this means that during water right regulation in most years, all flow will go to irrigation diversions, in which Idaho receives 57% and Wyoming receives 43%. And next, we will talk about cloud seeding in the Bear River Range. If you cloud seed in the Bear River Range, the water will ultimately end up below Bear Lake. The division that will be benefited will be the lower division, which is from Stewart Dam down to the Great Salt Lake. And some key takeaways from the NCAR feasibility and design study is that cloud seeding here also subsequently does impact the Salt River Range positively. And there's a lot of good seeding conditions here. However, in this range specifically, they are in mid and low elevation ranges, since this is a lower elevation range. So you do want to target that lower range, that lower elevation section in the Bear River Range, the lower section of the atmosphere. And so where does water go in the lower division if you cloud seed the Bear River Range? Again, small amount is going to go to irrigation diversions during spring runoff, in which Idaho and Utah will benefit from these for the diversions, but most of the water during spring runoff is going to go to the Great Salt Lake, in which Utah receives the benefit. During water right regulation, water right counting is used to administer water by priority date to Idaho and Utah in all years. And ultimately, what we're looking at here is all of the water that's going to be produced in the Bear River Range will be natural flow. And so on average, the annual average natural flow diversions is split roughly. Idaho receives 40% and Utah receives 60%. Okay, so kind of just to conclude, this presentation really was put together to provide a high level analysis and understanding of where cloud seeding water goes and who is allocated the water throughout the year, given that this is an interstate system. So realistically, in the Uinta Mountains, Upper Division receives the benefit. So during runoff, Bear Lake is going to get most of that, in which Idaho receives 30%, 5% roughly, Utah receives 65%. During regulation, it'll go to irrigation, in which Utah and Wyoming receive all the benefit. In the Salt River Range, the Central Division will be benefited during runoff. Most of that will go to Bear Lake, in which, again, Idaho and Utah get split that 35-65%. During regulation, it will all go to irrigation, in which Idaho receives 57% and Wyoming receives 43%. And in the Bear River Range, the lower division during the runoff season, the Great Salt Lake will benefit during this time. And in regulation, all will go to irrigation, in which Idaho receives roughly 40% of the benefit and Utah receives roughly 60% of the benefit. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Caitlin? Raybould.
This is a little bit off topic, but you were talking about the flood sitting in the Uintas and said that there may be some benefit to the Green River from that. Does Utah or Wyoming feed the mountains around the Green for increased flows there? Do you know?
That would be a better question for Jonathan Jennings, and he's shaking his head yes. Yeah, and so that would be what I was talking about in the Green River is ultimately cloud seeding. You're going to see benefit on the west side, which would benefit Bear, and on that east side, since it ultimately will produce precipitation in the high level, and some of that is going to go to the east side, and the plume will move over to that east side. And so that's when you're going to see the benefit to Wyoming users.
But they're also seeding other parts of the mountains around there to enhance the flows in the green, right? Yes.
Yes, and I think Jonathan too has potentially a slide there. There's ground generators all across Utah that do seed those different basins.
Mr. Chairman, Caitlin, in the lower division of the Bear River, you've indicated that spring runoff would all be attributed to the Great Salt Lake.
Majority,
And
yes.
then during regulation, Idaho would get 40%, 60%. How much of the total available additional SWE comes as runoff, and how much of it during regulation? We tried to dissect that. Is half of what we make used during regulation when irrigators can participate in that benefit, or that's broke down?
Mr. Raybould, I have not conducted that analysis yet, but I could conduct that analysis and provide a better understanding of how much water is during runoff or during spring irrigation. The lower division is a little trickier since it's not as straightforward, since inflow goes quite a few places, but that is an analysis that I could conduct if you would like.
I'm just curious that you're indicating 40% of the benefit goes to Idaho.
Yeah.
Well, 40% of what? Yeah, that would be my question.
Yes, I do not have the answer to that, unfortunately, but I could get the answer to that. I just did not have time to.
Don't stay late tonight. To okay, thank you. Yeah.
Any questions from other members of the committee, Dale, or there are other members of the board that are on the Zoom meeting?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Paul.
Caitlin, who administrates all these percentages?
So this comes from a variety of different agreements. So as far as the storage allocation itself, so for Bear Lake storage, that comes from the Bear Lake settlement agreement. And then storage use, how we've looked at that is we've looked at water right accounting for storage use and natural flow. But yes, as far as the Bear Lake settlement agreement and the Bear compact is where these different allocations are derived from.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other comments or questions for members of the board? I don't see any. Thank you. Okay.
Yes, thank you, members of the board. Appreciate it. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we've been asked to move item 7 up. Because of, I guess, Rainmaker folks have a flight to catch.
They don't have their own airport?
No, I don't bottom the drone.
All right, perfect. Yeah, so we will skip ahead and go straight to the Bear River Basin Year 2 pilot project proposal. Jonathan Jennings will touch on this a bit more during the State of Utah seeding update. Jonathan, if you maybe just want to come and propose your last slide, and then we'll get into the proposal, and then you could do the cloud seeding, the State of Utah cloud seeding update following that. Okay.
Welcome, Jonathan. We'll expect to hear more from you in a minute.
You'll certainly hear more for sure.
Welcome to Idaho, by the way.
Thank you. It was a beautiful drive in until the smoke started. But we've had our own issues with smoke in Utah. So
Did I get 4.5 hours?
yeah,
So,
I did pretty good, huh?
Yeah, that's a good run.
That's moving.
That's all Oregon smoke anyway.
It's the right answer. Okay, so I'll get into my presentation again. I'm Jonathan Jennings, meteorologist with the Utah Division of Water Resources. We thank you for your participation in the program last year. Really proud of what we've done, a lot of lessons that we've learned, and some of the challenges that are ahead of us in order to proceed forward. The state of Utah is committed to continuing the Bear River Basin program. We have $4 million allocated toward this program for the next year. And we from the state of Utah would like to ask Idaho of some things. And first is to continue to display a basin-wide approach to cloud seeding despite political boundaries. I think that's something that not just the state of Utah, but something we could do in the Colorado River Basin, especially in the Green River Basin. So I think this is a template that we can use moving forward. Idaho has always been forward-thinking when it came to investing in innovative technologies, investing in research. I know when I first came to the state of Utah, learning a lot more about all the research that was conducted by the state of Idaho really helped push the needle forward in the cloud seeding industry. So I thank you guys for that. And I do wish that you guys would continue to support that. And then Rainmaker is going to come up here and talk about their proposal. It's about a $1.2 million program that'll help supplement the cloud seeding project in Utah, where we're focusing on the entirety of the Bear River Basin. So that is a request from the state of Utah, particularly from Commissioner Joel Ferry. So I'd like you guys to certainly consider that and allow Rainmaker to proceed with how they plan to build this program for next season. I'll give it over to them. We'll take questions later, I assume.
Thank you. Matt from Rainmaker, please introduce yourself and you have the floor.
Yes. Hi, my name is Max Jones. I'm the Director of Water Policy for Rainmaker Technology Corporation. Thank you for having me, Chairman and Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you taking the time. Should be under a link. Yeah, let me just gotta share the screen. All right. So first of all, I'd like to apologize for my partner's wonderful scheduling, which is why we've had to sort of turn around who goes when in terms of the order of operations here. But sort of what I wanted to have a conversation about is the Bear River Basin, our proposal for next year, and kind of what we were able to accomplish last year in the first, groundbreaking joint partnership between the state of Idaho, the state of Utah, and our company, Rainmaker Technology Corporation, in using drones and physical validation to bring forward the science and the technology to ensure that we're creating water for Idaho and Utah residents. So the agenda for this presentation is to sort of run through the year 2 proposal, the program design, the validation approach, the timeline, from regulatory to just what we need to do on the ground to ensure that we're operational by November, the overall budget. And then number 3, which should be number 2, is the justification for continued operations. So a validated return on investment, which is really what our company focuses on, the new gold standard of validation, which is physical validation via radar and satellite, cost efficacy, support from Idaho constituents, and alignment with the existing NCAR feasibility study for the Bear River Basin, which we believe, as Caitlin also said in her presentation, brings a use case for drones in the Bear River Basin due to the altitude location of the supercooled liquid water being the seeding target. So proposal for year 2 pilot, it's the Bear River Range. It's going to be a 1-year pilot program, so sort of a continuation of what's already going on. The benefits being immediate and affordable fresh water for agricultural and industrial uses, targeting Bear Lake, ensuring that we have surface water storage. Expected yield from the 2 drone teams that we're expecting, or we are asking, Idaho to consider funding is 16 to 24,000 acre feet of water. Those are 2 of the total 7 teams, with Utah's investment as well, which is 5 teams on their own, so 15 drones. That'd be 56,000 to 84,000 for all 7 teams. So if Idaho were to consider the proposal, it would be a 7-team program in the Bear River Basin for about 56 to 84,000 acre feet of water that is physically validated via radar and satellite. So we can step forward into using the new gold standard of validation and ensuring transparency. And then the validation stack, we'll be implementing a Doppler on wheels, which is a DAO, radiosondes, ceilometers, satellite, radiometer, and radiometer, and in situ sensors, so PTH on the drones themselves. And the budget originally was at 1.662 million for IWRB's contribution out of a total for 5.662 total, because Utah's contribution for this upcoming Bear River Basin program is $4 million. So the target area, I I'm the director of water policy, so in terms of actual design of operations, my knowledge is limited as to why we would target what over something else. But obviously, the overall thrust of the mission is to increase the amount of water falling onto the ground as snow as possible in targeted regions such as Bear Lake, and ensuring that more water is reaching Idaho water users. As I was talking about earlier, IWRB funding would be supporting 2 dedicated drone teams to the state of Idaho, which is enhancing precipitation upriver of agricultural land in the state. And Utah will be funding the additional 5 teams for a total of 7. So that is sort of the preliminary design of the operation as we begin to, essentially begin the planning operations for this upcoming season if Idaho so chooses to fund. Seedability. Our seedability analysis comes from our proprietary software systems and also the NCAR feasibility study back from, I believe, 2022. There are strong seeding conditions in the areas as shown in the map. We would be targeting those areas for the specific reasons that we can actually be effective and demonstrate what we need to do and how to do it. But this also just doesn't come from our modeling software systems or what NCAR has shown as possible. It also comes from our experience this past year. The year 2 proposal is being built on the experience from last year's operations. So we can take sort of our boots on the ground approach, what we've learned, and apply it to this upcoming year as we can continue to develop the program. The validation stack. As Jared alluded to, last year we had some difficulty in terms of physical validation. While we were able to achieve new heights in that, right, being the first private entity to physically operate cloud seeding to demonstrate where exactly the water is going and how it's precipitating and all that, we needed and will need more validation technology to be able to demonstrate that 54,000 to 80,000 acre feet of water as physically validated to ensure that we have that transparency in terms of operations. So we'll be including a DAO and X-band radar again to ensure that we have a full scope of sort of what we're looking for and what we need. Jared, if you could sort of explain what the changes are in terms of the technology from last year to this year for the validation itself.
Yeah, so as we spoke previously, we had the Pocatello radar and the Sedgwick Peak radar. There's just a lot of blockage from the mountainous terrain. And so we could really only see higher altitudes of the cloud where we were seeding. By bringing a DAO radar, it's mobile, and so we can actually place it downwind of our operations, and our view shed basically will go from the ground up. So we'll have a better understanding of our seeding effect, also be able to track that seeding effect all the way to the ground. So it'll be a major improvement as far as radar capabilities are concerned. This is what they used in the Snowy campaign. So yeah.
Just go ahead.
So if there's 7 drone teams and only 1 radar, how does that work?
Yeah, so you can see, so this radar, these kind of lines, maybe it's hard to interpret. These are the view shed of the radar above ground level. Obviously it changes with the mountainous terrain, but the seeding teams would be distributed across the valley or upwind of the mountain range essentially. And then the idea would be you would place the radar in the optimal position to be able to monitor all those plumes as they're going through the storm and going up the mountain. So you'd be able to see
From 7 different sources, or they
yeah.
Same time?
Yeah, they'll be seeing at the same time. We do coordinated missions across the seven teams.
Thank you, Jared, and thank you for the question. So in terms of expected yield, again, this is a partnership program, right? So we're expecting 7 total teams in this proposal, and Idaho would be funding 2 of them. The 2 specific teams that Idaho in this proposal would be funding would create 16,000 to 24,000 acre feet of water that is physically validated. So we can actually ensure transparently that water is being created outside of, legacy technology being like statistical validation or target control analysis. So again, for reference, this is a portion of the total estimate, which is 56K to 84K acre feet. In terms of the timeline right now is radar and climate analysis. If we were to move forward from June to October, we would look at ConOps, siting, and staffing. and then full-scale operations in line with regulations and the wishes of IDWR and WRE, with full-scale operations from November to April 2027 to ensure that we're building up that snowpack rather than a focus on, rain. And then from April 2027 onwards, year-end review and possible program continuation and having conversations like this. Throughout that entire time, much like we did this past year, we would be doing monthly reports like we were able to share with various members of IDWR and frankly, frequent communication. So we kind of look forward to sort of doing what we already do and believe it pretty much already complies with what Senate Bill 1269 requires. So we look forward to continue to operating transparently and doing so. In terms of dedicated assets, it would be 2 dedicated field teams, 6 Elijahs, which are our drones, the V4 version, so the newest version, which have the flare holders and can stand even longer in severe icing conditions, and a Dow plus ground sensors for the physical validation. So the summary budget, the total proposed budget for that 5.66 was going to be an initial request for Idaho for 1.66. But understanding that this is a pilot program and recognizing the fact that Rainmaker is investing in moving this technology forward, ensuring that cloud seeding can become even more transparent through physical validation, we believe it would be totally fair to offer Idaho a discount down to 1.2 for what otherwise would be 1.66 overall discount. So why Rainmaker? We believe we're the appropriate operator for this specific program, not just because of what the NCAR feasibility study says in terms of where the location of the supercooled liquid water is, the length of seedable conditions, and why drones are appropriate for this type of technology, but also because we're building a legacy partnership here with the state of Utah, the state of Idaho, and the company to ensure that we have physically validated rain and snow and precipitation in general in the areas that we're targeting, being the Bear River Basin. So why Rainmaker? It's the drones, it's the validation, and it's frankly the cutting edge science that we try to bring to every operation that we do. And then physical validation. One of the big goals of this past year's Bear River Basin pilot program was to show that a privately operated and operational cloud seeding program could actually do the physical validation. So what we're looking for, and sort of as the followers of what Snowy and NCAR was able to achieve, we're looking for those physical validation, the seeding signature, the unambiguous creation of man-made precipitation, so we can actually show what we're claiming is real. On this photo, this is not from the Bear River Basin. Jared showed that imagery earlier via a GIF. This is a screenshot of one of the seeding signatures via radar from our Pendleton site, and one of our researchers on the bottom pointing out the glaciated trench, which is where the precipitation came from due to our seeding operations in Oregon. So cost efficacy, we certainly understand and recognize that it is certainly a difference in terms of overall price per acre foot based off the original 1.6 budget. This proposal would cost $69 to $103 per acre foot. At our discounted price, it would be $50 to $93 per acre foot. But we also frankly believe that this is in line with other operations that can operate the way we do. If you look at other NCAR studies, specifically the Medicine Bow program, where they are looking at strictly airplanes rather than ground generators, the ensemble mean cost is $81.87 per acre foot. The cost per acre foot really depends on the design of the program, where the water is going, and its value to the consumer and the water user. We believe that with our drones, we can be more effective and valuable in comparison to other technology that otherwise can be used, such as ground generators and airplanes. So target control versus radar validation. The entire technology that we're moving towards is, while it's not perfect, and we recognize that, right? Sort of work Jared was talking about at length, is our statistical analysis is significantly more than what we were able to demonstrate via physical validation, which is the radar validation and being able to see it on those seeding signatures on radar and satellite. But we believe it's the gold standard, and it's what we should all be aiming and striving for as we continue to prove out cloud seeding. So It provides enhanced certainty for customers and unlocks a quantitative precipitation estimate for individual storms. So our researchers and scientists can analyze the operations and be able to give an estimate of the actual precipitation created via operations within days to weeks after the event itself, after the analysis is done on those seeding signatures. So it allows us in precise and high resolution methodology to give the funders an actual determinative sort of answer as to what we're actually doing rather than relying on statistical or target analysis control. Again, it's not perfect just yet. We're working on it. And it's been incredibly valuable for us to be part of the Bear River Basin pilot program and being able to perform the physical validation last year, which was groundbreaking. And we hope to do only physical validation for upcoming operations. And we also believe that the NCAR feasibility study does show that the airborne seeding conditions really lean themselves towards the use of our drones. So NCAR sort of said, in their study, the targeted conditions are at specific altitudes that would be challenging for ground generators to reach and would also be challenging for airplanes to reach because they still are at lower altitudes that would otherwise be somewhat unsafe to fly in. So the use of our drones allow us to target conditions that otherwise wouldn't be able to be targeted. Further, the study also showed that 50% or more of the airborne seedable opportunities in the basin last for 6 hours or longer. Now that we can fly our drones pretty much 24/7, it means that we can target those seedable conditions the entire time. Whereas with other technologies, you have to operate an airplane, things like that. You have pilots and everything. We can switch in and out our drone teams and toggle them in and out to ensure that we're complying with either FAA regulations and ensuring that we're targeting all the seedable conditions possible. So if they're lasting 6 hours or longer, we believe that our drones can stay up in the air and seed that entire time. And this sort of bottom graph here is just showing that we had a couple of drone teams operating for 24 hours straight recently. Also, we believe, and we know because we saw the letters of support, that Idaho industry does support cloud seeding in general, with Idaho Farm Bureau supporting cloud seeding generally, and IWUA specifically supporting the Bear River Basin program. And that should say thank you and questions, but it's planned.
Any questions for Max or Mr. Smith from Raybould? Mr. Raybould.
Well, we gotta learn more about this cost per acre foot. Out in the big world, these may be very reasonable numbers, but comparing them to what we're doing here in the Snake River Basin, in the Upper Snake and the Wood and the Boise, and I think even Idaho Power's program, we're getting the job done for significantly less than that. So I think that's something we have to consider is why the costs are so much more with your program and these other ongoing operations that we have in place.
Yes, my response to that question is the cost is more because we're investing the technology into actually doing the physical validation and getting those seeding signatures. Target control analysis or statistical analysis is significantly cheaper to run, and therefore the costs overall are lower. But Jared, if you could explain more the difference between the TAC.
Just to clarify then, this is the total cost. This includes the validation. This isn't just the
Correct.
O&M cost.
Yes, we're a full service. Yes.
So the O&M cost would be half of that, 40% of that total?
If you want to break it out.
Yeah, the budget is right here.
We're basing on the service contract. So it includes, we have to get a very expensive radar that we can deploy. So there are a lot of costs kind of built into it, but yeah, this is kind of all inclusive. I think the big difference, one of the big differences that we don't know the answer to yet, but I think it's based off of the analysis method, the validation method. We are basically placing what we think is that the results are going to be maybe lower than traditional target control analysis would anticipate. And so that's where the big number comes in as far as the change of cost per acre foot.
But at least we can believe we can verify it. rather than the larger numbers that
Yeah,
are
if you could
produced.
break that down so we could get an apples to apples comparison. What are your operating costs that actually do the seeding compared to what we're looking at in the Snake River Basin?
Compared to the Snake.
Well, I mean, just of the $69 to $100 per acre foot cost, how much of that is the actual cost of your operating costs? You're putting your staff in place, O&M on your drones, the capital investment in your drones. How much is that compared to what we're doing in these other basins? And then, you know, we can talk about how accurate you're going to be in telling us how much additional SWE that was produced. And, you know, even if we take target control and cut it in half, the benefit in half. I mean, well, I would like to be able to compare apples to apples, what the cost of flying drones are compared to the program that we have in the Snake River Basin.
Yeah, we would love to share that information
I
as
don't need it
well.
right now.
I'm frankly, I'm trying to show it on my screen. I haven't seen how the other operators show their budget. So I don't know what that looks like, what an airplane costs, things like that.
Well, I mean, we're getting down, was it $4 and change per acre foot?
Yeah, I'm gonna look at the team, but yeah, that's. seems
Three
about right.
seventy-five, 377 to 4.
Yeah, so $4.
Mhm.
So even if we're only getting half as many acre feet, that's $8 for everything that we're getting with this other program. And so if even a third, if 2/3 of yours is validation and 1/3 is the actual operating cost of the seeding,
Mhm.
you know, it's substantially more.
I recognize that.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So I that's what I'd like to be able to do is get that apples to apples comparison. Don't expect you to dig up what we're doing with our Idaho power partner, but if you could provide us with that like information, then we can make that comparison.
Yeah, I will try to make the data as available as possible, so we can make that comparison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any additional questions or comments?
Chairman.
Mr. Parker?
So on the validation work that you all are doing, and you heard that you've got NCAR doing their own analysis of what happened in the bear. So how did those two dovetail? Are we overlapping? Are we doing something completely different with these two sets of analyses?
I don't know. I haven't been informed enough of what NCAR is proposing to do, but I think IDWR can speak to that.
Yeah, Mr. Barker, I can address that question. And so what the NCAR study would do, instead of actually simulating real world cases, which would be the direct validation of operations that Rainmaker conducted this previous year, NCAR will instead look at a average season. And so we'll be able to understand what an average, a low, and a high season would look like if drone seeding occurred. You just based on the frequency of conditions, and the cone is 404, so the atmosphere in the Bear River Basin. So it's not a direct one-to-one apples to apples comparison. Really the purpose of the feasibility and design study is to look at the average feasibility of drone operations. However, the data from this first operational year will be utilized within the model, because this data that was collected during Rainmaker's pilot season is going to be used. The radar imagery and the seeding scheme will be used to feed the model and to calibrate the model to ensure that the simulations of drone seeding is accurate in the model.
Any additional questions or comments for folks from Rainmaker? Next, do you have any closing comments?
No, I would just like to thank the board. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Are we ready to hear from Mr. Jennings?
Yes, absolutely. So next we'll jump back to agenda item 6. Which is,
Excuse me 1 second.
oh yeah.
To you folks from Rainmaker, thank you for coming. If you have to leave before we finish up, appreciate you being here and hope you catch your airplane. And
Yeah, I might leave at about 3. I got a 3:30 flight, so I guess.
so Anyway, appreciate you being here in your presentation, and if you have to sketch out, we understand. So,
Okay, thank you very much.
Go ahead, Chair.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll jump to agenda item 6, which is the state of Utah's cloud seeding update. Jonathan Jennings is the meteorologist for the Utah Division of Water Resources and the program manager for Utah's cloud seeding program.
Thank you, and welcome again, Mr. Jennings. Floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and the board. Again, Jonathan Jennings, meteorologist with the Utah Division of Water Resources, where my primary task is to manage and oversee the state's cloud seeding program. Thank you, Caitlin.
The mouse is there if you need to point at anything.
Okay. Before we get started, I want to go over the regulatory framework that is in place for the state of Utah. We do require a license and permitting process. We are currently going to be updating these as well. But as it stands today, we require three-week public notice of intention in widely circulated newspaper. Then we get the affidavit from that newspaper, make sure that it was actually run. We require proof of liability insurance, and then we also make sure that the operator provides us with an operations plan. Embedded within that is suspension criteria and maps for the areas that they're going to be targeting. We also have reporting requirements that are a little more strict than what the federal government currently requires, but there's going to be some changes, it sounds like, in that as well. And then all permit holders have to have a licensee, and that's typically a qualified meteorologist that has a degree in meteorology, as well as a certain amount of experience within the field. Right now, the state of Utah has 3 permit holders. That's Rainmaker Technology Corporation, and embedded within that is still the North American Weather Consultants. We also have Rain Enhancement Technologies that's doing work down in the Moab area and in the South Mountain Range. And then Emory Water Conservancy District, which is doing the liquid propane seeding in central Utah. So we understand there's a little bit of research going on liquid propane here as well. It was one heck of a year across the state of Utah when it came to finally implementing our strategy. So operationally, we had 187 remotely operated ground-based generators. This was really the first phase of the modernization of our program, where we moved and changed all of our manually operated generators and turned them into remotely operated generators. This streamlined operations quite a bit, but also gave us the ability to site these generators in more optimized locations. Therefore, we could better target with our ground-based program. Of course, we had our Bear River Basin drone program, which is why we're here today, and we'll get into that a little bit more. And then we also had the Utah North-South drone program. So we had drone teams in the Moab, LaSalle Mountain Range. We also had drone teams in the Fillmore area. And then we had drone teams in the Camas area, which is the Western Uintas. And in Utah, we consider that really the heartbeat of water resources in the state, because that is the headwaters of the Provo, the Bear, the Duchesne, as well as the Weaver. We did a lot of research. We'll talk about snowscape, a lot of really exciting research. But of course, anytime you do a field campaign, except for snowy, we get one of the worst winters on record. We're also doing an environmental study, and then also looking at a lot of modeling work. Then we invested a lot in infrastructure. Again, those ground-based units, we purchased a lot of equipment for snowscape that is now being used by the University of Utah that extends beyond the cloud seeding program. But ultimately, we spent a little over $16 million this year. Now, our ongoing budget right now is $7 million, but we were able to roll over some funding during the first couple of years of our new funding that allowed us to have quite a bit of money for this year. This was the year we had circled. Unfortunately, it was a record low snowpack year in the state of Utah, as I'm sure you guys are well aware. So I don't really have to go into the importance of the Bear River Basin, but of course, from Utah's perspective, it's all about the Great Salt Lake. 60% of inflows into the Great Salt Lake are generated within the Bear River Basin. That, of course, has a lot of impacts on ecological health, human health impacts, as you guys, I'm sure, have heard about the toxic dust situation. When the lake bed gets so low, some of that gets exposed, and there's arsenic attached to it. We just had a really big dust event a few weeks ago, which was quite interesting. A lot of industrial activity takes place on the lake. A lot of the salt that we use to salt our roads is Great Salt Lake. A lot of magnesium and lithium mining as well. Then, of course, agriculture. About 20% of irrigated lands are derived within the Bear River Basin. And then M&I, municipal and industrial. We have to make sure we're providing enough water for cities like Brigham City, Logan, Tremont, and many others. So climate variability is a big deal. And this is really not just a Great Salt Lake Basin issue, but this is an issue across the entire Mountain West. So here we're looking at April 1st snow water equivalent. So this is typically when we peak with our snow water equivalent. And this year we had a record low, and just 3 years ago we had record highs. But you can see the variability has always been there, but it's gradually increasing. In fact, if you look at how SWE derives over the course of a season, the last 2 decades, the decade we're in right now and the previous decade, are far below what we experienced the previous 3 decades. And when it comes to runoff efficiency, we're seeing that our peak snowfall or snow water equivalent is occurring earlier and earlier. This year, our peak SWE occurred on March 9th. Our average is April 1st. We're losing about 3 days every decade of our peak SWE. And that has huge implications on our runoff efficiencies when it comes to actually putting water in the Great Salt Lake. So short term, how are we looking in the Bear? Well, first, we learned a lot of lessons in 2026. We learned a lot about the different seeding agents, dispersion methods. We learned a lot about optimizing targeting. We want to make sure that the fallout of this precipitation is occurring in the areas where we can accumulate snowpack. Physical validation, we learned, is indeed possible, but it's very difficult. And part of that is because the lack of instrumentation that we have, not just in the Bear River Basin, but the Mountain West in general. So the focus this year is targeting fallout over those mountain ranges. So I've been working closely with the team at Rainmaker to make sure that that's a priority. Focusing on the Bear River Range. So the map you see here, that is your 10-year average winter precipitation using gridded data from PRISM. So that's from the Oregon State University. And it really showcases the areas where a lot of the precipitation has fallen. Of course, you want to make sure that those are the areas that you can really cloud seed. So the supercool liquid water overlaid on this really has a focus on that Bear River Range. Full physical validation, I'm being directed to ignore statistical evaluations moving forward. And that is something we plan to do. We want to really know what's happening in the clouds and then what's happening once it's on the ground. And then with Idaho's involvement, we plan to provide one of our radiometers somewhere within the state of Idaho to better target and validate cloud seeding using that radiometer. And we want to continue this basin-focused approach. Meanwhile, I want to continue support of our ground program. We are built, Utah's program is built on its ground program dating back to the 1970s. And we have a pretty robust ground program in the western Uintas, also in northern Utah in the Cache Valley, over towards Box Elder County as well. So we're looking at continuing that ground program and then potentially extending it one day into the Bear River Basin of Idaho. So what does the long term look like? How is Utah seeing this in the long term? Well, we have a $2 million ongoing fund for this. And it is directed towards the use of drone-based cloud seeding. And the language is a little flexible that allows us to go beyond the Bear if we need to, stay within the Great Salt Lake Basin, but we could go beyond the Bear. But right now, that is our focus. We want to stay within the Bear. We want to continue this partnership. The focal point within the state is for both operations. We want to operate now. I think the honeymoon in terms of figuring out whether or not drones work is over. We want to now fully optimize this program and focus on physical validation. We want to see actually what is falling out of the clouds. And then our focus really is that Bear River Range, where roughly 3.2 million acre feet of precipitation falls annually. And that's from some of our engineers and water resources. What does this look like beyond the fiscal year or the water year 27? Well, again, the ground-based program is something I'm really interested in expanding into the state of Idaho. I've been assigned to the Utah 2034 Olympics Weather and Snow Preparedness Working Group. And within that, we're hoping to build gap-filling weather radars in some of these areas. So it might not benefit Idaho directly, but one of the locations that we're planning, or two of the locations we're planning to put radars is in Evanston, Wyoming, and also in the northern Cache Valley, right on the Idaho border. So you could have some benefits from there. And that'll help with physical validation. And that's really one of our big focuses is trying to physically validate cloud seeding. But also Snowscape. This is our research project. Really excited about this project, proud of what we've done so far. And we're hoping that Snowscape could get us a much more realistic outcome to return investment. Not all snow equals water. We got to understand the hydrological processes behind that. And Snowscape is going to help us answer those questions. Oh, I just passed it. Low delay. There we go. So we talked a lot about already this targeting control evaluations. And over the course of the last 30 years, this has been a great tool for the cloud seeding community. And it's still a tool that we can use today, but there's a lot of issues within it. Target and control correlations could be more derived by understanding the large-scale atmospheric phenomena like ENSO or PDO. So these are large-scale atmospheric phenomena. So there's some issues with that, but using a linear regression method, Utah was showing about a 6 to 12% increase in its target areas. And then the team at Water Resources back in 2018, they correlated some of those snow-tail sites to streamflow, uninterrupted streamflow gauges, and found about 200,000 acre feet of additional precipitation or streamflow across the entire state. So that evaluation came out to about $3 to $4 per acre foot. And assuming that we've done nothing better since 2018, we're now sitting at about $27 per acre foot based on our current budgets. But again, there's a lot of challenges with snow-tail targeting control sites. This is a small point observation trying to represent a very large area. Snow redistribution happens throughout the course of a season. So whether that's in a positive effect or a negative effect, it's determined based on the year. And not all increases are the same. We're learning a lot about the impact that additional snowfall in April has on the albedo or the reflectivity of the snow. If we could get a late season snow and increase the albedo, we could delay runoff by a couple weeks. That increases runoff efficiency by 10 to 15%. So there's a lot of positive effects to having a cloud seeding program go well into April. But also, we've seen a lot of expansion in target areas within the state of Utah, and that's eroded some of our control sites. So now we're running out of control sites. And some programs have outlasted climatic periods. So historical data is not representative of what we're seeing today. So there's a lot of issues there. And again, I mentioned earlier, correlations between target and control could be more similar based on just El Nino or La Nina. So there's a lot of issues, and that's why we're trying to move forward and look at either physical validation or modeling, which is what Snowscape is based on. So Snowscape, I won't go through what the acronym means. I get it wrong half the time anyway. But the idea here is we looked at the Weber River Basin. So what you're seeing here on the bottom left of that map, that is Antelope Island, where we put an X-band weather radar. And then on the right side of the map, we put another X-band weather radar, and they're looking at the same peak. So that's Snow Basin ski area. And we litter that area with so much instrumentation, precipitation gauges, radiometers measuring the supercool liquid water in the cloud, solometers measuring the particle size and distribution inside the cloud. And we also had the state-of-the-art aerosol trailer at Powder Mountain, where we were collecting a lot of data for CCNs, cloud condensation nuclei, and then ice nuclei as well. In fact, some researchers from Japan found out about this program and started sending us instruments to include. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes out of the aerosol side of this. But the idea here was not to find the physical validation. What we wanted to do instead is piggyback off the 2024 Wyoming study that showed a simulation using WRF weather mod, and then putting that result into WRF hydro and simulating stream flow increases from cloud seeding. But what we did different is we did this field campaign to help calibrate the model, train the model to represent Utah better. So we just did that field campaign. It went from January 7th to about March 7th. It produced a lot of different varying storms for us, which is really nice. But again, it was really warm. That -5 degree level that we rely on for ice nucleation just was higher and higher and higher. And I think that's going to be a really big challenge we have moving forward. So again, here's some of the instruments that we had out there, the X-band radars, the aerosol trailer. But one of the things I'm most proud of this project, we have 50 students involved, and we're going to be funding 4 PhDs and 2 master's degrees with this program. So getting new blood into the cloud seeding industry was really good. And we're going to learn much more about the weather in this area beyond cloud seeding as well. So it's really exciting research, fully state funded. And from the concept of thinking about this to implementing it was 1 year. So we got things moving really, really fast. So what do I hope we get from Snowscape? I want to improve the scientific rigor behind cloud seeding evaluations. I think that's something that's lacking right now and we can improve on. I want to be able to give my policymakers a much better idea of what their return on investment is, or like we talked about, cost per acre foot. Using some of this research to optimize our operations, strong collaboration. This is one thing I'm also really proud of is during the field campaign, we've had some of the best researchers from the University of Utah, Jim Steenberg, Annette Haller, We had some of the best researchers from Utah State, Vinod Pockrell, John Meyer. We had NCAR team, and we had zero conflict the whole time. Everybody knew exactly where they were supposed to be, and it just went on without a hitch. And we hope to improve Western states' confidence in funding cloud seeding. And then we also want to compare and fill in gaps using physical validation. So where we can't do some of the modeling or we can't afford it because it is quite expensive, that's when you can start looking at physical validation, whether it's using the current state of radar and satellite or what's going to be happening in the future with gap filling weather radars and potentially satellite radars as well. All right, so you guys already saw this, but I am more than happy to take on any questions and go from there.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Again, thank you for coming up to share your information with us here in Idaho. I have a couple of questions concerning the proposal of 7 drone teams, 5 in Utah, 2 in Idaho. What if Idaho didn't participate at all? Would Utah put any emphasis in cloud seeding the Salt River Range, the storage areas above Bear Lake?
No, if Utah did not participate at all, we would. That's part of the reasoning behind the flexibility we have in the language in terms of focusing on the Great Salt Lake. So we would go back to our local partners and try to figure out what the Weber Basin needs or what kind of efforts we can make directly over the Great Salt Lake.
What about your 150,000 acres of Bear River water user, not Bear River Canal Company in Tremont, and their storage water out of the Bear Lake? They have an extremely good water right, but if Bear Lake's empty, half of nothing, it's still nothing.
Right. No, there's no doubt about that. So we would still be targeting that Bear River Range within the state of Idaho or within the state of Utah. So we would potentially have positive effects on the east side of that mountain range. But really, we would like to see some level of collaboration here so we could. And one thing that I disagreed with the way the proposal was built is 5 teams, Utah, 2 teams. I would like to see more of a holistic approach to where we didn't care about that. Let's just see the optimal locations and help both states out.
Thank you.
Sure.
Follow up to that, Mr. Chairman. Jonathan, does Rainmaker have the ability to do that? I mean, I think that's one of the things we see with our Snake River Basin program. The airplanes go to where they can do the most good. And 2 of them are located over here and 1 in eastern Idaho, but that plane, eastern Idaho, goes to where the clouds are. And so as we see storms move in, can we concentrate the seeding effort where we have the potential to have the greatest gain in snow water equivalent?
Yeah, I certainly believe
it's just, we've drove some stakes in the ground, and this set of drones is at position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7.
Yeah, I think the reasoning behind some of the, I guess, restraint is based on the ability to receive waivers from the FAA. But I do know that the regulatory team with the FAA, they can make magic happen. And we probably would be afforded the flexibility to move around, but it would be up to what the FAA allows us. I don't know if Max wants to comment on that at all, but I would expect Rainmaker to have flexibility in their ability to move around the basin. And that's part of why we're getting the mobile radar. That way we can chase the teams and set up in prime locations.
Yeah, I have no further comment on that. We have flexibility based off of what our permits and waivers say themselves. But the beauty of the drones, sorry, I'll stand up. The beauty of the drones is that we're able to sort of move them where they need to be, and then they can fly where they need to go, and setting up the teams in accordance to what we're seeing on our software and obviously weather reports and what we need to accomplish.
Yeah, well, Mr. Chairman, just follow. I agree that we need a collaborative program. It's foolish for Idaho to go off, do their own thing, and Utah to do their own thing. When all we're trying to do is create benefits that will serve both states.
I completely agree.
Any other comments, questions? Pat or other gentlemen ladies and gentlemen on the committee have a question or comment?
Nothing here, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much for your time.
Any additional comments or questions? Thank you, Ms. Jennings, again for being here, and look forward to working with you tomorrow.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask our staff, are you looking for this committee to make a recommendation to the full board for this potential
Yes, Mr.
funding
Raybould.
or?
We are asking if the committee does have a recommendation to the full board at this time to fund the year 2 of the pilot project in the Bear River Basin.
Or if we just want to recommend that the full
Mr.
board. consider it?
Patrick has a comment.
Yeah, this is a decision that we'd be asking you to make at the August 7th meeting in Rexburg.
Yeah.
August
So,
5th, that's okay.
uh,
Yeah, okay, fifth meeting to make a recommendation to the 7th.
right, at the business meeting. on the
Excuse me,
7th.
I knew you were ahead of.
If this board has a recommendation, that might be helpful, but, you know, it's also a decision that you could punt to the 7th if that's your preference.
Well, and I believe this committee's meeting again on the
On the
5th, as
5th,
the chairman
5th at 6
indicated.
o'clock.
Maybe we could have staff have some answers to some of those questions that we've asked today. We could make a more informed decision on how to make a recommendation to the full board on August 5th. Would that be appropriate?
Here's some head nods, but,
Yeah, absolutely. We can add this as an agenda item on the August 5th meeting and request a recommendation to the full board on that August 5th meeting.
that, I think seems to be appropriate. Or we have another meeting scheduled before the board meeting on the 7th.
Perfect, absolutely. Yeah, staff will collect all the information requested from this committee and we will provide that information to the committee on August 5th.
Any other business need to come before this committee?
Mr. Chairman, yes. We're still spending a lot of money on validation and in-car evaluation and all of that. And Caitlin, if you could come to the next meeting with recommendation, something that says, you know, we have to do all of these things together, or there are things in here that we could do without as part of moving ahead. Because, you know, it's a big chunk of what is in the Rainmaker proposal, and of course, it's $1.5 million to NCAR. So there's a lot of money in there in evaluation, and I know that the legislature has told us that's what one of the things we're supposed to be doing, is evaluating these programs. But we don't need to spend money that we don't need to spend.
Yeah, absolutely. I can provide a presentation that condenses what components of the project would be recommended.
And if we need it all, tell us that too. Don't just say, well, cut this just because.
Okay, we'll do, Mr. Marker.
Mr. Chairman, I do think staff found the number to answer to Al's earlier question about what the Bear River flow was this year. I thought that's what your text told me to do.
Well, so one thing can add, so far as this year exactly, no, we do not have that answer at this point in time. However, on doing a quick research, the normal total that's produced out of the Bear is about 1.4 million. At least that's what Google AI said. So take that for what it's worth. The amount that comes from Idaho into Utah is around that 400,000 range.
Any additional comments or questions? Caitlin, do you have direction that you need from this committee?
Yes, we have the direction we need from this committee. We'll come back to the committee with a presentation for the August 5th committee meeting and a request for a recommendation to the full board on August 7th at that committee meeting.
Is there any other business that needs to come before this committee?
None here.
I want to thank everybody for their participation. We've been here about at 2 hours, and it's probably time to wrap up. I want to particularly thank staff. I mean, we walk in and we ask you questions, and we expect you to have answers at your fingertips, and you usually do. And I know that there's probably some heartburn when we come to town. There's probably some sighs of relief when we leave. So I think Mr. Raybould and I are about ready to leave. Again, I want to thank everybody. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your time, and particularly the staff. With that, the committee will be adjourned. We'll have another meeting on August 6th at 6 o'clock in Rexburg. Thank you. Meeting's adjourned.
That's PM, right?